important. So tonight I would like to deal with a scripture. Let's go to the 8th chapter. And while you're turning there, let me ask and do a blessing to Hashem for the ability to do this great study. Hashem, our King, King of the universe, we thank you for the great opportunity to study your amazing, miraculous words. May they be uplifting to us. May the words that we speak in the meditation of our heart bring about a praise to you. And we thank you. Amen. It says in verse 14, let's go to 13, okay? Heck, let's go to 11. Sorry. Take care lest you forget Hashem your God by not obeying His commandments and His ordinance and His decrees, which I command you today, lest you eat and be satisfied, and you build good houses and settle, and your cattle and sheep and goats increase, and you increase silver and gold for yourself, and everything that you have will increase. And verse 14, and your heart will become haughty, and you will forgive Hashem your God. You will forget Hashem your God, who took you out of the land of Egypt from the house of slavery. I would like to talk about this very important question. What is the difference between haughtiness and pride? Is there a difference between haughtiness and pride? On the surface, you would probably say, nah, it's the same thing. One leads to the other, it's the same thing. But there is a difference. However, there are different places in the text that's going to admonish us to also not to be prideful. But we're going to look at the context. We're going to read what a few of the sages say, and we're going to walk away from this understanding a biblical principle that can help us in day-to-day life. On the onset, it must be stated that the Torah does not specifically prohibit haughtiness. Now, what? Hold on. What did it say? Hey, hold on. So listen, in the unusual language of the negative prohibitions, which you guys have been doing on Shabbos, one does not find a verse such as, you shall not be proud, or your heart shall not be uplifted. It doesn't exist. Now, in the JPS version of the Bible, you'll see the added words to this text. It says, beware least, sort of a quantifier. And the little translation would be, and your heart shall grow haughty. Notwithstanding, several scriptural passages speak against pride. Now, I'm going to go through some of these passages. If you're taking notes, I'll try to slow down enough for you to get them. The first one is Proverbs 16:5. It says, everyone who is proud in his heart is an abomination to the Lord. Well, it looks like already we're building up that there is a very negative connotation to haughtiness and pride. Here's another one, Psalm 105:5. Whoever has a high look and a proud heart, I will not tolerate. Those are the words of Hashem and the psalmist David. He says, if we add these to the numerous condemnations of pride in the rabbinic literature, such as Shekhinah laments over every man who is haughty in spirit. That means the very presence of God laments over a man's haughtiness in their spirit. Every man, quote, in whom there is haughtiness of spirit deserves to be cut down like an idol. As a matter of fact, it says the person who's full of pride and haughtiness is like avodah zarah. They're like an idol. That comes from the commandments as well. Every man whom there is a haughtiness of spirit is one who worships idols, or is one who denies the existence of God, is likened to one who has erected an altar to idolatry. This is found in Sotah 4b and 5a. Now, interestingly enough, the idea is being formulated to where we can understand what is appropriate pride and what is inappropriate pride. It's already been set up by this text. Why? Because he says, if you have pride in which it's at the level that you have committed avodah zarah, in which you do not recognize God as being the one true God, Now, where are we going on this? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Anybody getting a hint yet? Anything yet? How about, I've done all this because of me?
Recognize him and everything.
Right. So going back to the first text that we just talked about in chapter 8, verse 4, this was what was being said. They said to themselves after getting into the land and everything is prosperous, look at what we've accomplished. Lest you forget that I brought you out of the land of Egypt. So now we have a context as to what is the difference between haughtiness and pride, or is there a haughtiness and a pride that's appropriate? We're going to go through this and examine it. Since the Torah does not word this character flaw in the negative, what is the source for the prohibition and what is the deeper meaning? Long ago, the Talmud possessed the same question, or they asked the same question, posed the same question. From where can we learn a prohibition against haughtiness in the spirit? Two sources are cited. Rava points out the verse in Jeremiah. It says this, listen and pray heed, do not be proud, Jeremiah 13:5. Now Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak quotes a verse in our Parashat saying this, beware lest your heart will be uplifted. In order to comprehend the teaching of Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, it is necessary to examine the verse in its entirety within the context of which it appears. So we're going to look at this. We're going to quote it. Here it goes. This is the whole section of that we just read in chapter 8. Take care lest you forget the Lord your God. Note. And fail to keep his commandments. Note. Or check mark. His rules and his laws which I enjoined upon you this day, when you have eaten your fill and you have built your houses to live in, and your herds and your flocks multiply, and your gold and silver and gold increase, and all that you have will be plentiful, then your heart will be uplifted. What is the uplifted? Pride and haughtiness. You feel this uplifted. Now pride and haughtiness, it says, and you will forget the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt. So is there a difference between an uplifted heart that remembers God and what he does? Absolutely. We're going to find this out in a moment. And you say in your heart, my own power, my own strength, my own hand have won this wealth for me. Remember that the Lord your God who gives you the power to give wealth. Now, every one of us in this room like to be thankful and grateful for making good money this year or last year. And just about everybody in this room wouldn't say, well, by my power and my knowledge, I've done all of this. We all say, well, God gives us the ability to make wealth. And that's why when we hear someone saying, kvetching or complaining that I don't have a job or I can't find money, I can't take care of things, you tell them, God is your source, not the school system, not ExxonMobil, not the government. That's not your source. Your source is the creator of the universe. Therefore, focus on what is important for you and your relationship with the Creator. He'll take care of the rest. According to Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, the words "then in your heart will be uplifted" are not a part of a factual description of what may occur, but constitute a prohibition against pridefulness. Exactly the way the JPS Bible understood the verse is the reason why they put the emphasis on that, and basis on the Talmudic rule that says, in every place where it is written, beware, quote, least, or do not, the reference is to a prohibition. This is Sota 5a. Now, Rav Nachman is of the opinion that this phrase would soon be linked to, quote, beware, at least, which appears in verse 12, or before it in verse 12. And that is the biblical source for the prohibition against pride. So, hold on a second. I thought we said that there is an appropriate pride. Is there appropriate pride? Well, let's see. Rava preferred, so it would seem, the source of Jeremiah, because of the prohibition, is specifically worded, do not be proud. Similar in style to the prohibition in the Torah itself, while Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak prefers the verse, then your heart will be uplifted, precisely because it is found in the Torah rather than in the prophets. And as we know, greater importance is attached to the precepts of the Torah than those written in the book of the prophets, which are defined only as, they consider them less authoritative than actually what God said. If God said specifically, then that's what Rosh is. But the prophets, it might have some other different things. Maimonides, in his Mishnah Torah, follows the opinion of Rav Naaman, saying, and it is also said that anyone who uplifts his heart and denies the existence of God, as it says, then your heart will be uplifted and you will forget the Lord your God. And Maimonides disagrees with this. He is of the opinion, this is what I love about Jewish thought and about the Mishnah, is you'll have one make a statement that I agree with this person, and then you have the third person go, well, I disagree with both of you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's more amazing about the study of Judaism, is you're able to read even the dissenting voices in a text. And what do you think is the most important reason why we should hear the dissenting voices?
We can think for ourselves.
Absolutely. We are thinkers. We need to be able to think. Exactly. Thank you. Maimonides disagrees. He has an opinion that the source of the prohibition against pride is to be found within those verses in the Torah which define the proper behavior of a king. Now think about this for a moment. It makes a lot of sense. Specifically, that his heart be not uplifted above his brethren, and that he may not never turn away from the commandments to the right or the left. Deuteronomy 17:20. And he goes on to explain it like this. Quote, the Torah has hints to the prohibition of pride, for if the Scripture forbids pride and haughtiness to a king, it is all more true for his subjects, for the lower class, or what do you call it, his those who he is governing over. It is absolutely important that even though he carries himself in the greatest office, people bow to him when they see him, and he recognizes that. He also knows that he should not develop an attitude that I am more of a special category than they are. He's a human being before the Creator of the universe. It is important that this humility the king has is demonstrated, even though he has a responsibility of the king to act as royalty. Does it make sense? He has royal behavior that he conducts himself with. For example, the king sitting on his throne, lifts his scepter up for those people to come into his court, and that there is protocol, there's a process in which they come to him. But that is not a part of pride or haughtiness. It's a part of his position as the king. Protocol, exactly. It doesn't mean that it's pride. Now, it helps for those who have been in a military environment. Even I would say probably even a corporate environment. There are some corporate environments. I know Catherine has much experience with this, in which you go in, and the corporate attitude in one place is diametrically opposite from another. And I've been into places in which they treated the CEO of the company as if he was the Mashiach. Right? Am I right, Catherine? Don't touch him, don't talk to him. They escort him around. They have everything set up for him. And it's amazing. I would be, if I was the CEO, a bit humiliated by the whole experience. I'd be like, please stop. What's the point of this? But at the same time, that's their corporate structure. Does that mean he has haughtiness or pride? Not necessarily. No. Unless he physically went around and thought he was much better than his lowly subjects in the company. That would be the difference. The Torah here hints at the prohibition of pride, for the Scripture forbids pride and haughtiness to a king. So the idea, if it issues haughtiness to a pride or a king, it would also include us. Now, Rabbeinu Yonah of Gerona agreed, writing this verse. He writes this in Sha'eri Teshuvah, section 3, says this: we have been warned to remove the attribute of pride from our souls, so that the great man should not act haughty toward the lesser man, and even the king should not lift up his heart over his brethren, and even though he rules over them his reign, yet his heart should be humble. This divergence of opinion in the part of Maimonides requires further explanation. And why did he choose to base his opinion on a verse different from that which was brought by Rav Naaman bar Yitzchak? when it says, when your heart will be uplifted. One might say that there are two kinds of pride. The pride of success and the pride of arrogance. Arrogance. Do you get the picture? What's the name of the big football player in Houston? Watts. J.J. Watts. He doesn't seem to be a prideful man at all. Well, he doesn't. I've not met him personally. I think you've met him, right? Not a haughty man. However, I am sure that he's proud of his accomplishments. And I'm sure he realizes I have abilities that not the average person has. He's a heck of a lot harder than me. So there is a difference. There are two types of pride. That pride of arrogance is the type of pride that says, I'm better than everybody else and I know it. Now, the question is proposed now from the sages. It says, if an individual, say in a particular social social group or particular community, if this person has accomplished much more, is it really pride when he says, I know more than everybody else in this subject matter? You see that it's hard to say, right? So we would immediately say, well, no, it's not pride if a person says, well, doggone it, I've worked hard. And I've worked hard to succeed. And I'm like they have a thing, I think they call it in the government world and the military world, it's called subject matter expert. Mm-hmm. Right? And it sounds like, whoa, hold on a second. But no, there are subject matter experts out there. They know what they're talking about. Is that pride to say I'm a subject matter expert? No, of course not. However, if you say, you know what, I'm a subject matter expert and I know everything, and you guys don't know anything, that's a little haughty, right? Because we all know that everybody has some knowledge base, especially in that community. So, the question is what is the pride of arrogance? The pride of arrogance is when an individual removes God from the picture. That's it. The words here, beware that you do not forget your Lord your God, are directed at this type of pride. And that is why Rav Naaman Bar Yitzchak indicates this verse as the source for the prohibition. Here, haughtiness is not forbidden in usual form of prohibition. You shall not be proud. Because it is not reviewed as a bad quality on its own, which mars a man's character, but as a factor in another prohibition to forget the Lord. Driven by his pride, the successful man may totally forget that Almighty God is the one who makes his success possible. In verse 18 of this chapter 8, it says, but you should remember the Lord your God for it is he who gives you the strength to attain success. I haven't listened to Rush Limbaugh in 10, 15 years, I don't think. But he used to have a comment. I don't know if he still does. Talent on loan from God.
He still does.
Right? And everybody thought this guy is a pompous, radio guy. But at least he said on loan from God. Right? Now, some people thought, okay, that's pretty prideful that you think God gave you your talent. But in reality, isn't that what we're supposed to do? God gave me this talent. He gave me this ability. And, I'm going to tell you, I've heard people just say, oh, that's horrible. How can you have such chutzpah to say that God gave you this talent? But the idea is every one of us who are God-fearers say that all the time. Say again?
I want more of that kind of food.
No, absolutely. That $400 million worth of that, right? Right. So, God gave you that ability to do it. If there is a good pride, can also be a false humility. Right? If there's a good pride, there's a false humility. What would be a false humility? Knowing that you're good, knowing what God gave you to do, knowing that He gave you this ability, and when someone says, wow, that's great, you don't go, well, the Creator gave me this ability. I'm so glad that I had this opportunity to do this. The The faulty humility or the false humility is, oh, well, it's nothing, I'm nobody.
I do what I can.
I'm not really that talented. Do you see the difference? I mean, you almost can see through it. But if the real good, and I think sometimes we're afraid to show genuine, authentic pride in what you do. Sandy does website stuff, and she works like a Hebrew slave in the dark of her room, right?
By the glow of the screen.
By the glow of the screen, right? And she slaves away, and you know what? It's interesting because very few people probably know this, but you're the subject matter expert in what you do. And anybody from that field that you're working specifically for, if they have a question, you know that you could pretty much answer it. But if you say, you know what, God's given me this ability, and I like doing it, it pays the bills, and yeah, I know what I'm talking about. That's not pride. Pride would be what? What would pride be in your area? Well, it's tough being me.
I'm the only one that can answer.
I'm the only one that can answer this. I'm the only person that really knows how to do this. And, if it wasn't for me, the owner of this company would be just flat. I'm the one that's bringing this company up. Yes, sir.
So would it be like when we develop an attitude that says that we can't be replaced?
Right, exactly. Or how about this? Develop the attitude that God's not involved in this, and even if, but there would be no difference whether God was involved with it or not, because He's got me. I'm like His favorite. Yes.
A business owner has pride and thinks that none of his employees can do his job as well as he can. He's going to limit his own growth
Right.
because of his pride.
Right. No, absolutely. You're right about that. Now, I do know some people, they have become very wealthy because they were good at what they do. And then when they got to where they were supposed to be, they did not have the sense of God-fearing attitude toward things. And it's kind of weird to be around somebody like that. I haven't been around but one person like that who, I mean, they were, what's the word for it? Just full of themselves.
Sounds like Bilam.
Right, very much full of themselves. And so you'd never hear uttered, I really thank God for giving me this opportunity because He's given me the ability to work through this process and make a lot of money.
You can be humble without bringing the word to turn God into it.
No, you can. You can say, how about this? You can say, I'm quite fortunate because I don't know if I really deserve to have all of this. This is like a gift given to me. Yes, sir.
There's another side to this, and if this is a sidebar we don't need to go into, let me know. But I'm thinking about this, and you can. So like, I think it's fair to say I probably know more about computer programming than anybody else here.
Right.
But at the same time, if you're talking to me and you're saying, "Oh, you're such a good programmer," and in my head I'm thinking of conversations I'm having with my peers, and they're running circles around me with what I can do, then there's a war in here where I may be a local subject matter expert,
Right.
but maybe in another group I'm running in, I feel
Right.
very humbled because
Right.
other people I'm around are so much better than me.
Right.
So, and I guess what I would say from that is you don't want to judge someone else in thinking they have false humility because
Right.
you don't know what other experiences they're going through.
No, but I think it'd be clear though, if let's say that we're talking and you say, if you put this widget in this gizmo and press these 5 buttons and put QB354, I'd go, wow, you really know what you're talking about. And you go, well, look, there's a lot of people that knows a lot more than I do. I just know this. That's not false humility at all, right? If anything, that's perspective, right? It's the truth. I wouldn't find that false humility at all.
Wouldn't it be good to always give credit to the one that sometimes I taught you? I wouldn't.
Sometimes, it'd be great if you could.
This little tidbit and taught with you if I hadn't learned this from such and such. Sometimes giving praise to somebody else who taught you, in my opinion, will show you that you're more humble.
Right.
Less arrogant.
Right. So the idea here is, whereas it is reasonable for a person to be aware of his own achievements and accomplishments and what contributed to his prosperity, because a lot of people are prosperous or have accomplished things because there's been other people that believed in them and helped push them up the ladder, right? he still has to have a balanced sense of recognition that everything comes by the hand of Hashem. Right? Yes, sir, Tom?
All this leads to something I just ran across, and God gives us all what we get in time, talent, treasure. You see somebody works hard, they didn't get treasure.
Right,
I'm saying God works real hard and makes a lot of money.
right,
Some people live longer, some people don't.
right,
So, the talent we have, yeah, we can develop it, but we have to start with something, and God gives us.
right, right,
Go to school and try to improve on what we have, but when you recognize that God gives us those three things, then that takes away this pride
right.
that's your whole life.
Right, and so the issue is that everyone is capable. I mean, my goodness, if the children of Israel, who were at the highest level of holiness before entering into the land, if they could somehow forget, who are we? I mean, come on. I mean, it's easy for us to forget that we are where we're at because of the hand of the Creator. And, you know, from that, it's like we can understand that pride and haughtiness is absolutely forbidden if it's done in the wrong way and for the wrong purpose. And what is the wrong way and the wrong purpose? Is leaving God out. Now, there is a story that I would like to use to illustrate. This is what we call a success story that backfired. I don't know if you remember when the army of Assyria stood opposite of the walls of Jerusalem. And there was a great general, Rav Shekha, who stood on the outside and he said these words, "Which of all of the gods of the countries have saved their countries from my hand?" Right? Then he says, "That the Lord should save Jerusalem from my hand." So he said, look at all the other countries we've invaded and overcome. Their gods didn't do anything, so what good is your God going to do you? This is found 2 Kings 18:5. Here we have a proclamation filled with contempt for God, aggrandizing, building himself up. And look, trust me, he had enough to brag about, did he not? He had accomplishments. But the problem is posting those accomplishments before the very creator of the universe. Whew, that's some chutzpah. Here we go. The reaction of the Lord was not long in coming, and delivered by the prophet, which said in Isaiah 10:5 this, "Can the axe boast against who chops it?" What axe goes, "I did a great job chopping the tree down"? It doesn't happen. The prophet then goes on and says, "Can the saw make itself great against who yields it?" Of course not. It's ridiculous. Isaiah 10:5. Rav Shaka, just like any other success story, must be made to face the truth. For it is he who gives you the strength to attain all success, found once again in Deuteronomy. Now let's examine in the last closing marks the second type of pride is arrogance. The individual who lords himself over others. While the first king of pride is affected with a proud man himself, it's a matter of how he relates to his own achievements. The second sort of pride affects the way he relates to others. He sees himself as being superior to those around him and believes that he is better, wiser, and more successful than they are. Perhaps it is true that he is more successful and better. If he really is better, it might not be a serious fault, as we said. The Torah does not intend for a talented man to deny his abilities. If you're talented, there's nothing wrong with saying, "I do a good job." Reminds me of our current president. The Torah has no interest in repressing man's true evaluation of himself. I think some people that are overconfident, like Donald Trump, it comes over as really pompous, doesn't it? Right? But
Is he overconfident, or he's just confident in something?
no, he's very confident. But the thing is, like you said, he's accomplished all of this. Now, it could be debatable whether it's haughtiness or pride, but he's got money to. He's got what do you call it? Proof is in the pudding, right? So I don't know. Okay, the problem begins when that pride is imagined and not real. Now, listen to this: pride is imagined and not real. When someone imagines himself to be superior than others, that kind of pride is negative and unacceptable. The Malbim, in his book, Harchamel defines it as follows. I love this. Pride is imaginary and not real when it exists only within the arrogant person and not outside of him. When he imagines himself to be more than he really is, and he takes pride in himself, though he has no quality above anyone else. This is where the verse of the chapter dealing with the king comes to play. The king may be aware that he is superior in the sense that he is king. People bow to him. People kiss his ring. People kiss other things. They want to be accepted by him. Yet he treats them as equals, though he has a protocol that he has to follow. In the issue with the king, pride begins the moment the king imagines that he is better and more successful and more talented than others. There's no substitute to support such imaginings in the words. That his heart not be uplifted above his brother. So the idea is this: is yes, you can know your position, but also be aware that God also can. What's the text says? That God establishes kings and disposes kings. And so the idea is this: every one of us can be successful on right and have pride in what you do. Be lifted up in what you feel good about yourself. But you can also forget the equation or the God equation, that the creator of the universe has given you everything that you have. He's given you the ability. I mean, I look at individuals who have great ability to obtain, like, photographic memory. It blows me away. People who can, Rabbi Singer is one. Like, this guy can anything he reads, he remembers. I have to write it down and put it into note form. I don't remember it. Of course, I can remember the most mundane, stupid thing, right? It always comes back to me. But I admire that in another human being. I admire the fact that there are other people who have that ability. But at the same time, think about what honor and credit and glory to Hashem, the name of Hashem, comes from an individual who has that ability, that talent, whatever it may be, and yet still walks in humility and without a sense of pride. I'm reminded of the men that my eldest son works with in the world that he works in. They are specialists, the highest degree. They are the cream of the crop, the best there are. There are none better. And yet, if you were to talk to them in the backyard of a barbecue, you would have no clue what they do. Not because they're trying to be secretive. They're just normal guys who's worked hard for what they do, and they realize that the only reason why they're there is because someone has invested millions of dollars to make them who they are. They're not arrogant and prideful and boastful. It's not like the movies. These guys are just normal guys. They have family, they have children. And it's amazing to see that level of perspective from those types of people. I would be highly disturbed if I went to my son's house and was at a barbecue in the backyard and seeing guys walk in that were like Van Diesel and who else? Give me some other ones. The Rock. I would be so disturbed because I'm thinking, dude, that's arrogance. That's pride. And so, like I said, we're living in a time in which it's good to have a perspective on this as God fears. That concludes this shiur, and we'll go to questions and answers.
The tool that I